6 million unsafe abortions occur in Africa, resulting in 29,000 deaths and countless serious injuries and disabilities every year.
Africa still has the highest death rate from unsafe abortions in the world. More than half of global deaths from unsafe abortion are in Africa alone.
For women in Africa, access to modern methods of contraception, safe abortion, and other aspects of reproductive health care is quite simply a matter of life and death.
It's been documented by organizations like FIDA that before abortion laws came, in almost every community in Africa, abortions happened. And this was taken care of by the same women in the communities who delivered women when they had children. It was with the dawn of abortion laws that abortion became criminalized. Because of these laws, millions of women, African women and girls, have lost their lives.
At that time, it showed there were about just over 300,000 abortions occurring in this country every year.
Between 2011 and 2013, the Africa Population and Health Research Center, in conjunction with partners, conducted a study on the magnitude and incidence of unsafe abortion in Kenya to inform legal and policy reform.
At the end of the study, we found that almost 500,000 abortions, induced abortions, occurred in Kenya in 2012. And that about 75% of all these abortions were actually unsafe.
IPAS Africa Alliance advocates for improvements in the policy and law reform to allow for safe legal abortion across African countries. Institutions and state actors many times are not aware of the laws and policies in their countries that could be driving maternal mortality. And so the PAMDAP program came in to coordinate, actors to address issues around maternal mortality related to contraception and difficulties of access to contraception and unsafe abortion.
The three main objectives under PAMDAP were really to hold governments into account, capacity build, and create champions. And the third key objective was looking at building an evidence base. IPAS Africa Alliance was funded to look at the policy environment, looking at what laws exist. Are they being implemented? If they are favorable laws, what do we need to do for those laws to be implemented so that then we don't have girls and women dying because of unsafe abortions?
Addressing unsafe abortion in Africa through progressive statutory and policy measures is a key component for creating an enabling environment for safe abortion. IPAS designed its policy work to be executed at the Africa regional level through the relevant Africa Union organs. Key among these were the Africa Union Commission, the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, and the Pan-African Parliament.
The Africa Union Commission is the main body that holds the Secretariat. One of the first key things we felt that was important was to work with the Commission to come up with a publication around the legal framework on abortion in Africa. One of the key other elements that I would say we actively engaged the African Union Commission on was on the Maputo Plan of Action.
It is the first international human rights instrument to specifically address women's right to safe abortion. The Pan-African Parliament is the African Union's legislative body.
We took the Pan-African Parliament members for a study tour to Ethiopia because of the policy framework that they have, but also the fact that the implementation of abortion services is happening well in Ethiopia. And so the parliamentarians were able to see, this is possible.
IPAS worked closely with the Special Committee on Health, resulting in the drafting of an advocacy and balance scorecard toolkit to guide advocacy efforts on access to safe abortion.
Nous avons reçu une demande de collaboration avec IPAS. Donc les députés de la Commission Santé, Travail et Affaires sociales, dont je suis et le rapporteur avons saisi la balle au bon. Nous nous sommes dit qu'il faut vraiment essayer d'interagir avec IPAS et de signer un mémorandum même d'entente avec IPAS pour pouvoir essayer de sensibiliser tous les députés pour que le Parlement panafricain s'implique.
The African Commission on Human and People's Rights, ACHPR, is a quasi-judicial body tasked with promoting and protecting human rights and collective people's rights throughout the African continent. IPAS worked with the commissioners of the ACHPR and specifically the Office of the Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Women in Africa to advocate for meaningful action to address unsafe abortion amongst African governments and hold them to account.
Donc en 2014, compte tenu de notre collaboration avec IPAS, compte tenu de toutes les informations que IPAS a mis à disposition de la Commission africaine, en tant que rapporteur spécial sur les droits de la femme, j'ai initié l'élaboration des observations générales.
This partnership resulted in the ACHPR moving forward advocacy efforts by launching the ACHPR Decriminalization of Abortion campaign in 2016. This campaign was further strengthened by the formation of the Africa Coalition on Safe Abortion, a network of organizations which coordinates advocacy efforts across Africa. To ensure experiences, commitments, and technical advancements taking place at the regional level translated to the national level, IPAS worked with key networks, line ministries, and non-governmental organizations with programmatic and policy-making responsibilities.
What IPAS has sought to do is kind of invest in the capacity of young people to be able to advocate for access to safe abortion care services at all levels.
As the youth from the campus, there are many girls who doesn't know about the abortion, about what the penal code said about abortion. Our aim was to advocate campuses, youth.
Women for a Change will work both at the local level and at the national level, and we realized to always bring on board grassroots organizations to make sure that they're in these spaces and also have their input.
Other thematic areas the project worked on include penal code reform and interpretation of national and abortion laws through courts.
The 1977 Penal Code provided that abortion is illegal, and the only exception was only when it was a threat to the health of the mother. So with a lot of advocacy from civil society, the 2012 Penal Code changed, and one of the conditions was to have it in line with the international conventions that Rwanda had signed and ratified. In 2003, Rwanda signed the African Women's Protocol, which is known as the Maputo Protocol. Immediately, a paragraph was inserted to Article 165, which stated that in order to have an abortion due to incest, due to rape, due to forced marriage, you need to have a court order. The research we conducted out had shown that most people in jail were uneducated. Secondly, none of them was beyond the age of 25. Thirdly, none of them had a steady job. So we found out that this is a crime for women. Secondly, crafted for young and poor girls and uneducated. When we discovered that, we took upon the issue of advocating for the law to change, the 2012 Penal Code to change.
Now, what has been happening in Uganda on sexual reproductive health rights is that, sexual reproductive health rights has been highly looked at as a cultural issue and religious issues. So the time we came in as lawyers, we were thinking about the kind of value that we could actually introduce. So when we made up with IPAS, they supported a national conference, and a resolution was actually made at that national conference that we had to establish a coalition. The Ministry of Health embraced this because they looked at it as an opportunity to be able to put evidence together and bring stakeholders together.
Sexual health moves beyond sex. We talk about sexuality.
The legal environment, abortion remains criminalized by our penal code, sections 141 to 143. But then we have a window in that penal code, section 224, which allows termination of pregnancy. So there is that phrase as authorized by law. Now, that phrase can be subjected to a number of interpretations. We are not in court to argue for the criminalization of abortion. We are there to regulate abortion. Abortion can remain criminalized, but the circumstances which are envisaged by the Constitution should be spelled out.
Development of standards and guidelines for medical practitioners.
IPAS led the process of the development of the standards and guidelines on abortion. And when these guidelines were adopted, they were adopted as the Ministry of Health standards and guidelines on abortion. The sole reason of the standards and guidelines was to align the practice around abortion services to what was provided in the Constitution. Like a year after, anti-choice groups were able to lobby the Ministry of Health to withdraw the standards and guidelines on abortion.
So we had a chance in about 2003 to conduct a national survey to actually document what is the magnitude of the problem at national level. That's when we brought up the fact that actually almost every day 800 women and girls have to suffer because they're removing a pregnancy that they don't want. So then there was the introduction of the comprehensive abortion care concept. One is how do we prevent unintended pregnancies? The second one, how do we deal with unsafe and unplanned pregnancies when they occur? But also for those pregnancies that must be terminated, how do we make sure that the terminations don't necessarily lead to death? So after 3 long years of multiple consultations, finally the Director General of Health Services signed our guidelines. Unfortunately, about 2 months around the course, the same Director General withdrew the guidelines.
Engaging national human rights institutions to keep governments accountable for commitments on human rights.
Reproductive rights were recognized as human rights.
When this matter was brought to our attention, it came to us within the issues to do with our sexual reproductive health rights with a specific attention to maternal health care. When we picked it up, we decided to do a holistic look into the whole issue of sexual and reproductive health rights, not only limiting it to maternal health care, but on a whole range of issues, including access to safe abortion.
Training media practitioners to cover stories on safe abortion and regional treaties.
It is very difficult to report on abortion here in Rwanda. First of all, it's a taboo. Secondly, people are not aware of Maputo Protocol and the laws. When journalists can understand the issue and they can see what they can contribute, it will go well. After IPAS, you can have maybe 10 journalists who you can sit with them and discuss on issues.
Working with grassroots civil society organizations to increase awareness on laws relating to access to abortion services.
Our work with IPAS has included them supporting us in starting a hotline. It's called the Antigen Hotline. Women and girls can call and get information about sexual and reproductive health, including contraception and safe abortion. Part of the work that we've done with IPAS as well is advocacy. We have done the Decrim campaign, which is a campaign that calls on African presidents to ratify and domesticate the Maputo Protocol.
Engaging parliamentarians on the policy-making process for sexual reproductive health and rights, including safe abortion.
We formed a caucus called the Parliamentary Human Rights Association. Then came IPAS with an interest to do the sexual reproductive health bill. Because lawmaking is a personal issue. You really want people who can relate to personal stories. You want to speak for someone who doesn't have the ability or the means. So once you give me stories that I can relate to, then I'm happy to push your agenda forward and with regards to the lawmaking competence.
Implementation was, however, not without its challenges, some of which include
the key challenge that we have faced is building the capacity of our champions, and with time, the champions move on and, get involved in other areas.
The other thing is also the sensationalization by the media that creates barriers to access, stigma at the community level, both from within the community and also for healthcare workers, and also just lack of the health system being ready, although the law is clear to provide services. That means lack of equipment, lack of drugs, lack of diagnostics.
More challenges include The introduction of the Ministerial Improvement Clause in Rwanda's new safe abortion law, arbitrary withdrawals of standards and guidelines in Kenya and Uganda, impact of the US gag rule on existing and prospective partners, the duration needed to change policy often exceeding project lifetime. Nonetheless, the project had several achievements worth noting as well.
For us at the Alliance, one of the most exciting news to come within the last few months was changes in the DRC, where they have gone ahead to gazette the entire Maputo Protocol and have put it in their press.
We recently were able to actually sign a memorandum of understanding with the Pan-African Parliament.
The way the media talks about abortion has improved due to sensitization and information to the media.
We explained to the court the fact that a teenager under 18 is pregnant is itself, under Rwandan law, proof that there was defilement. So the High Court in Rwanda, for the first time in Rwanda's history, the court ordered that the girl has an abortion. This is one of the greatest jurisprudence that we celebrate today.
The most important achievement is the development, launch and dissemination of the General Comment number 2, which expounds on Article 14 of the Maputo Protocol. The second is court challenges that have happened in Rwanda and Kenya. In Rwanda, it's challenging the legal barriers. In Kenya, it has been used to acquit convicted nurse who had performed post-abortion care. We also have publications that we have been able to do with partners. One is One Voice for Choice, and also the Judicial Handbook. The launch of the SHPR, the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, Decriminalization of Abortion campaign, which is supported by the African Coalition on Safe Abortion.
More achievements include adoption of a liberalized abortion law in Mozambique in 2015, building the capacity of over 2,000 stakeholders, the development of standards and guidelines for abortion in Uganda and Kenya, unsafe abortion advocacy coalitions formed in Uganda, Rwanda, and Malawi, and subsequent formation of the Africa Coalition on Safe Abortion.
The sustainability model that we have adopted over time is institutionalizing the engagements with different partners, being able to invest in structures at the national level that would continue the work, and definitely building of champions, because if you have champions who have been strengthened, they would be able to continue this advocacy at the national level.
To uphold the human rights of African women, countries should take steps to review restrictive laws in accordance with regional and international commitments. Governments must commit to providing safe abortion services through their public health systems to the full extent of their national laws.
We are able and motivated to continue to work to move this forward because we can see little successes here and there. Each of them builds on the efforts